So here's a subject that most of us don't like to talk about it, but it's really important because things like fear happens, it's around us all the time. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not good, right? Sometimes
Yeah.
sometimes it's lion is chasing us and we need to run, and sometimes we don't need to run, right? So yeah, let's talk about it. My friend Kareem, I wanted to talk about facing fear because that is, we know based on the research, one of the top scientifically proven things that resilience people do. They know how to face fear.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, when I think about resilience, I think about one person who comes to mind, and that is, I'm sure you've heard of him, Colonel Sanders, who's the founder of the Kentucky Fried Chicken franchise. The reason I always take him, I relate him to resilience, is that he faced so many obstacles since he was in his teen years until he, I know, surpassed the age of 60 or 70. And he didn't reach success until he was over the age of 80. So the fact that he just went on, like a rubber ball, no matter how much he was distorted, no matter how much pressure was applied to him, he just kept on going from beginning till end until he reached success, no matter how long it took. So for me, that's what resilience is.
Yeah, that's so true. And that's resiliency and like a lot more on top of it, right?
Yes.
That's that persistency, that's that optimism, that's that pushing for it, that's that, fail a million times until you succeed, right? But that's what resilient people do. Yes, that's absolutely what they do. Great example. I know that there are certain things that based on research, resilient people do, and that is first of all they have a spiritual support. Now, spiritual support, people always get, well, but I'm not religious, how do I get that? It's not about religion, it's about spirituality, right? There could be religion, because for religious people that it's really easy, they got it, that's it.
Yeah.
They have that, they have it. But for people who are less or not religious, then finding spirituality somewhere else, all right, in mindfulness, in universe, in meditation, right, connecting to something bigger than yourself is where really it definitely helps. Then the other thing that I know they do is they basically get the help from groups or organizations, right? So we're not really here to live or to build anything alone or to face fear alone, right? Mm-hmm. So they have they are members of certain groups, certain organizations, and certainly they have their social support, which mm-hmm. is really the biggest one, right? Mm-hmm. These days it's kind of maybe a little difficult, but it's a social support, having friends and family and colleagues and people around you that can support you. And if you think about facing fear, I wanted to mention this before we go, before I turn it to you. There are people who face fear on a daily basis, every day. Think about police, think about firefighters, right? Even athletes, different fear, but there is a fear, right? And and they just deal it. But what do? They face it. That's it.
Yes.
When it comes to fear, face it, right? Don't try to run away from it unless it's a lion. Then please run. Don't listen to my advice.
Yeah, definitely.
Right? But don't run away, because chances are you can't run away from certain fears. All right. So you have to really face it and move on. Figure out what to do and then move on. What do you think?
I totally agree with you, especially about all the factors that you mentioned, like social support and spirituality and religion. All of them are definitely a part of the package. When I think about facing fears, this is why when I learned about it in your PPMC course, I felt it was one of the most effective factors for resiliency. Because it sort of reminds me of two different events or scenarios. Like, I remember when I was in university and I really thought that I wanted to be an engineer. And And then after like 3 years, because in Egypt we have 5 years, not 4 years like abroad, I felt okay, this isn't what I want to do. But I had 2.5 years left, so I didn't really know what to do. And should I just transfer? And that was my fear on an academic level. And then I thought, you know what, just stride on. You have 2.5 years, you're almost there, and then do whatever you want. You'll have all the freedom to do whatever you want. But the dilemma was, should I just do the effort as much as needed, or should I take it to the maximum? I decided to go with the latter, and thankfully I graduated with distinction and everything. And I felt good about myself, not because I got a high grade, no, but because I could have just gave up to the fear of being in an endless, university that doesn't end and it's so boring, at least at that point. But no, you go with it. That's from an academic level. And from a personal level, I think I've always been an introvert. I think sometimes you might notice that because I'm not a bit quiet, but I just, I like, peace and quiet and everything, and just, being chill to some extent. And I remember I was in this big event and there were like over 200 people. And then I was like, okay, what? And I was literally standing in the middle of the room. And I just didn't know what to do. And it was at that point that it was a changing like moment in my life, because I said, okay, you know what? Just go talk to that person, and then go talk to that person. And then I think I ended up talking to 10 different people. It was so mentally exhausting because I just, flipped the switch to try and be social. But I think it just broke that barrier or broke that fear. And afterwards, it was much easier to socialize. I do still like my private time, but I definitely can interact with people more. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's...
So it's about, again, facing it, right? And breaking that barrier.
Yeah.
The other thing, I think what's really key to facing fear is the action. It's the action. And the reason I said that, I'm thinking back, in the days 1991. I came to US on business trip. War started. I couldn't go back. Left all the money on my account. Left everything I had. Huge apartment in the center of the city. Everything, right? And started life from zero. And what did I do? That was absolutely, it's fearful, right? What do you do? How do you start your new life? But instead of thinking, what do I do? It was all about action. It was all about that desire to create a new life, start from the beginning. And you had to move on. When things that bad happen, you basically have a choice. You're going to give up or you're going to move on. That's it, right? And, if you are action oriented, regardless what it is, you will figure out a way, as long as you have that big why. I have a huge why, right? I got to support my family. So as long as you have that huge why, then everything else is easier.
I totally agree. And but I think the why that you have should be like divided into more than one, right? Like, what is the why right now? What is it for the future? So I'm sure you had different answers to that.
True. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's a day to day. It's like,
exactly.
It's my big why for today, for tomorrow, for weeks, yes, you're absolutely right. But like I said, we all face a fear at different time of our life and different fears, if you will. And today, at the time of recording, and hopefully some of you listening now don't even know what this is, but we are in. Everybody unfortunately knows in the entire world we are in this COVID-19 crisis, where most of us were locked in the place, in a house, in the apartment, for a year and a half. Some of the countries are still going through full lockdown. I had my students in Australia. I was just talking to one last night that they are still in a full lockdown. They have a curfew. They can't even get out of the house. They can only go for, get some essentials. And this is a year and a half after this terrible virus hit us globally. And so this is the big fear that we all facing. Thankfully, none of us, this generation that I'm talking about, went through something like this, right? But this is the fear that we are going through. What do you guys do? I'm talking about Egypt or your friends or yourself to face this fear. We have to deal with it. There is no escape. We can't just say, I'll go to another country, or there's like no answer. What do you do? How do you guys deal with it?
Well, definitely, it's been obviously, as it has been around the world, a very difficult time in Egypt. I think the barrier that really got to them the most was the job security, because they're like, for me, okay, I'm relatively young and I'm single and I just have myself to take care of, so it wasn't that big an issue for me. But for a lot of people, no, they had families to attend to and everything. So I think definitely the main obstacle was the part of job security. I can't speak on behalf of caregivers and people who provide for their families, but I definitely like to hear your point of view on that. But for me, as Karim, it's a reality that you have to deal with. There's nothing in your hands to do, and that's not being pessimistic, that's being realistic. And then, as you always say in your course, that's not a form of pessimism. You have to deal with the situation. So it's all about doing an action plan. Okay, so I don't know how long this is going to be, and so I remember creating an Excel sheet on my laptop and creating 3 lists, sort of like a now list, and like in the next year list, and then a future list, things that I can resort to after I've been fully settled in. And you sort of have to make the best of the situation. And actually, I took it as a positive side, the glass half full, because, okay, now I have some time to do whatever I want. So I took, I think, like a bunch of writing courses. And actually, without COVID, I wouldn't have learned about Udemy, and I wouldn't have been introduced to the PPMC course. So it all worked out for the best. And I started looking up some master's degree. So I could go on and on, but I'd love to hear about how you handled it, especially because you had a family to care for and you had your courses and everything.
Yeah. So this is really interesting. I've heard the same thing last night from another colleague and student, former student, that, got an extra time. And this was really great for me. And this is really for the rest of us that are fortunate enough that are still here on this beautiful planet, right? We unfortunately globally lost so many people. I lost my first door neighbor, like in the very beginning, March last year, a year and a half ago. I lost a number of friends and so it's hard, right? It's really hard, but it's all about planning. I think when something like this happened, like you said, doing a planning and really understanding, being prepared for the worst, being prepared. I knew this will be at least for a year, and I was prepared to be at least a year. And everybody who was, overly optimistic, we'll be gone in a few months, they struggled mentally because it wasn't gone in a few months, right? So we talk about optimism, but it's a grounded optimism. Don't just say everything will be fine, right? But be realistic, right? Be realistic. Again, sorry for that we lost so many lives, and for some of us lucky ones that are here. Yes, most people who are action-oriented did exactly what you did and what my other student and colleague did, which is, let me figure out how can I use this time because I'm home. I can't go out. I can't go with the friends to dinners and bars and restaurants and movies and, sport events. And maybe I can take use a good time. So what I would recommend people to do just that, to reach out to friends, reach out to family. If you can't go see them, there's always the beautiful way of FaceTime and Zoom calls and whatever today exists. There is this still thing phone that's called phone that you can just call somebody. You don't have to text.
Yes.
So reach out, right? If you have an issue, any fear, reach out. And the other thing I was discussing with my colleague, actually another podcast, which is that some people, that's even not enough. So some people may need a coach, but then that may not be enough. Some people may need a therapy. Right? So please reach out for help. If not all of us can face COVID-19 or any other fear in a way that maybe you and I are facing it, right? So some people, if it gets to that point, please get help, get professional help. That's really, really important, right? Because we don't want people to think, oh yeah, look, everybody else is like dealing with this, but I just don't know how to, right?
That's very true. Yes.
There are so many reasons for that. Right? There are so many reasons for that, from genes to your the way how you live the entire life. It cannot be just switched overnight. So I think so I think that's really important. Look for some help in certain organizations. There's even online support so much. There's so many groups. So yeah, that would be my recommendation. And as far as what people do during this time, it's absolutely personal choice. Unfortunately, it became political, at least here in West, right? So it's one side or the other. I don't care about politics, but what we did really for a long time, we locked in ourselves in the house, especially because my wife has a certain condition and I wanted to make sure that she doesn't get the COVID. So, but again, it's really your choice, but be careful. And there are things we do, there are always consequences, good, bad, or ugly, depending on what actions we take. That's a life, right?
Very true, very true. And like again, like there are so many factors. I think Braco emphasized on the most important two, which is social support and religion and or spirituality or whatever belief system there is. And I think one more that I actually heard recently, you actually teach it, but I heard it from a client of mine yesterday actually. He said that during COVID he was just about to apply, or he wanted to join the rowing team, the local rowing team in his city. And he actually during COVID started working out at home, so he got all the necessary equipment at home. And physical fitness is actually one of your resiliency factors. And even if it's just running around the house doing push-ups, crunches, whatever it may be, just letting out that steam and that negative energy. That's why sometimes they say playing squash is so ideal, because you just exert all that negative energy into the ball and into the racket. So definitely physical fitness is a great addition to that. So yeah.
Hey, thanks for mentioning this. Physical fitness, and the way that I was kind of breaking it down, is one of the top 10 resiliency factors, but you can certainly combine it to, you will be able to easily face fear if you are fit. And doing exercise every morning, every day is really the key. I like to give that, I call it me time, to do it first thing in the morning for myself, that I take care of myself before I take care about anybody else. But that's a good point, right? That's a good point. Anything that works for you, could be home, could be outside, could be, whatever works for you, but certainly move a lot, move,
Yes.
Eat well, sleep well, and you'll be in good shape.
Definitely. As they say, there's always a healthy mind and a healthy body. So that's just the reality of the situation. Yeah.
Exactly. Cool. So yeah, this was a great discussion. And for some of you folks that don't know Karim Sheta is my former positive psychology mastermind coach, a student who now is certified, and also is a trainer and corporate trainer. And we actually do a lot of similar work these days, and certainly proud to have you here, my friend.
I really thank you so much for inviting me. It's always a pleasure to be with you and to learn from you until this very day. So thank you so much.
Thanks, my friend. I'll talk to you soon. Take care now.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.